By the time Diana pushed through the biometric doors of her xenobiology classroom, the artificial sun of Galactic Federation Station Epsilon 9 had begun its programmed descent. The vast viewing windows surrounding the educational sector displayed a breathtaking panorama of stars and distant nebulae, a view that still made her pause, despite having been here for 3 full cycles now. Mr. Seheros, her Owlkin instructor, had kept her behind once again, his 4 obsidian eyes blinking rapidly, as they always did when he was either excited or anxious, in this case, decidedly both. "Thank you for your patience, Diana," he had said, his feathers ruffling slightly as he carefully tucked away the data crystal she had provided. "I must admit your species' history is profoundly disturbing, and yet fascinating beyond measure." Diana had merely nodded, already tired of being treated like some exotic specimen. She knew what the aliens thought of humans, dangerous, unpredictable Deathworlders from a planet that should, by all scientific reasoning, have killed them before they ever developed space travel. She'd been answering the same wide-eyed questions for weeks now. Your concept of nation-states, separate governmental entities, competing for resources on a single planetary body. I simply cannot fathom how your species avoided extinction, Mr. Seheros had continued, his translator pendant struggling to convey the appropriate tone of bewilderment. "And these world wars, the scale of destruction." "Yeah, we're real pieces of work," Diana had replied with a sardonic smile. "I really need to go now, sir. Tyler's probably wondering where I am." The corridors of Galactic University's diplomatic exchange wing stretched before her like an endless ribcage, the translucent blue-tinted walls pulsing with subtle bioluminescence. Diana passed several other species, the tall, elegant Selphids with their graceful movements, a cluster of Meraxian students, whose crystalline bodies refracted the ambient light into shimmering patterns, and even a lumbering Dorvan whose massive 6-limbed body took up nearly the entire passageway, forcing Diana to press herself against the wall to slip past. None of them made eye contact with her. They never did. The gravity throughout the station was calibrated to a universal standard established by the Galactic Federation, approximately 1/5 of Earth's crushing pull. Diana had grown accustomed to the strange sensation of near weightlessness, though she still occasionally miscalculated her strength, sending objects flying when she merely meant to nudge them. The Federation engineers had installed specialized gravity generators in the human dormitories, creating enclosed pockets of Earth-standard gravity where the transfer students could experience normal conditions. It was a thoughtful accommodation, Diana had to admit, even as she wondered if it was more for their comfort or to contain their dangerous physical capabilities. When Diana finally reached her assigned living quarters, she pressed her palm against the biometric scanner, which glowed green in recognition. The door slid open with a gentle hiss, and immediately she felt the familiar weight of Earth's gravity settle over her like a heavy blanket. The automated system announced, "Gravity simulators returning to human living conditions," in that peculiar computerized voice that sounded like a cross between a GPS system and a bored librarian. "God, that feels better." Diana sighed, rolling her shoulders and feeling the proper resistance as her muscles engaged. She jumped experimentally, pleased at the normal arc and landing. "Feels like home. Well, look who finally showed up," came a familiar voice from the kitchenette. Tyler emerged with a bag of potato chips in one hand, real Earth potato chips, imported at what must have been astronomical expense. "When I heard we were sharing a dorm, I thought the Federation officials must have made a mistake. Didn't think I'd see your face again after Old Man Jenkins' history class back in Denver." Diana smiled despite herself. Tyler had been in her advanced placement history class at Denver Preparatory Academy, before the Federation's Educational Exchange Initiative had selected their entire class for transfer. Rumor had it that the aliens had originally planned to handpick specific human students, but quickly abandoned that approach, overwhelmed by Earth's complex educational jurisdictions and the sheer volume of paperwork involved. Instead, they had simply selected an entire AP class at random, 30 teenagers yanked from their ordinary lives and transported across the galaxy to become unwitting ambassadors for humanity. "Hello to you too, Tyler," Diana replied, dropping her school tablet onto the sleek featureless table that dominated their shared living space. The dormitory was surprisingly large compared to what she'd expected. A central common area branched off into individual sleeping chambers, a hygiene station that attempted to replicate Earth bathroom fixtures with mixed success, and a kitchenette stocked with both terrestrial and alien foodstuffs. Everything Earth made still had price tags and product labels, evidence of the Federation's hastily organized supply procurement. "So where've you been all day?" Tyler asked, crunching loudly on his chips. "Most of us were released hours ago." Diana sank into one of the ergonomic chairs which immediately adjusted its structure to accommodate her spine. "My new history teacher's planning a lesson about Earth, but it turns out the guy knows shit all about it. Kept me after class bombarding me with questions." Tyler snorted. "Let me guess, he couldn't believe that humans still fight each other instead of unifying into one big happy planetary government." "Bingo," Diana said, flicking her tablet screen to display the files Mr. Seharos had shared with her, the compiled histories of 17 different spacefaring species. "Turns out we're the galactic anomaly. Every other intelligent species unified during their equivalent of our dark ages. No civil wars, no competing nation-states, no genocide, just one smooth evolutionary trajectory from primitive tool users to unified planetary civilizations. So basically the rest of the galaxy's got itself on pussy mode," Tyler said with a smirk. Diana couldn't help but laugh. "I'm being serious when I say that half of these guys don't even know what an earthquake is. A fucking earthquake. One of the most natural things on Earth, and these guys look at me like I'm describing some fantasy novel when I mention tectonic plates shifting and reshaping entire continents." Tyler nodded enthusiastically, his eyes lighting up. "You should have seen Brody in Interstellar Military History today. His teacher, some jellyfish-looking thing, nearly passed out when Brody mentioned that World War I killed over 17 million people. Several students actually did faint. And get this, when he tried explaining the concept of poison gas warfare, they evacuated the classroom and called in a psychological support unit." "No way," Diana said, but she could easily picture it. The Federation species seemed to share a collective horror of violence that bordered on pathological. Even simulated combat in entertainment was considered a taboo subject in most galactic sectors, and Caleb got pulled out of their version of dodgeball because he was throwing the ball with excessive force dangerous to other participants. The instructor measured his throw velocity and said it exceeded their safety protocols by 300%. Tyler shook his head. "The ball felt like it was made of cotton candy, by the way. I'm pretty sure a strong wind could propel it faster than their standards allow." "What about Jen?" Diana asked, remembering their outspoken classmate who had never been shy about expressing her opinions. Tyler grinned. "Oh man, Jen nearly started an interstellar incident in the cafeteria. Turns out none of these aliens cooked their food, something about thermal modification being barbaric treatment of organic matter. When Jen found out, she got into this massive argument with the lunch server about how humans have been cooking food for like 2 million years and demanded a hot meal. I thought the poor alien was going to call security." Diana laughed, feeling some of the day's tension dissolve. "Sounds like we're all having quite the cultural exchange. Which reminds me, what's with the gravity? Outside our quarters, I feel like I could leap tall buildings in a single bound." "You said it yourself," Tyler replied, crushing the now empty chip bag. "Everyone out there lives in what's basically baby gravity. The standard is calibrated to the self-id homeworld, Apparently they're physiologically incapable of surviving in anything stronger. But even accounting for the gravity difference, we're still stronger, faster, and more durable than pretty much every species on station. So we're like space demons to them, Diana mused. Pretty much, Deathworlders they call us, creatures forged in hellish conditions beyond their comprehension. Tyler gestured grandly, adopting a mock-serious tone. Oh, and get this, the tech guys somehow managed to hook our dorms into Earth's internet. No idea how they're transmitting data across thousands of light years, but I'm not complaining. At least we can still watch Netflix. Diana perked up at this news. Thank God. I thought I was going to die of boredom out here. Well, I'm going to raid the food storage and see what's edible. Can you let the others know I'm here? Might as well organize some kind of human get-together if we're all in the same boat. Will do, Tyler said, retreating to his sleeping chamber. Fair warning though, the Federation tried to replicate some Earth foods with limited success. The peanut butter tastes like someone described the concept to an alien who'd never seen a peanut. As Diana explored the kitchenette's offerings, her thoughts turned to her family back on Earth. What would her parents think if they could see her now, a reluctant ambassador of humanity on a space station filled with beings who regarded her species with equal parts fascination and terror? Her father would probably be taking notes for his next science fiction novel, while her mother would be concerned about proper diplomatic protocols. Diana smiled at the thought, even as a wave of homesickness washed over her. Meanwhile, across the educational sector in his private office, Mr. Sayharus stared at his display screen with a mixture of horror and disbelief. The historical files Diana had provided painted a picture of Earth that seemed more like a nightmare realm than a habitable planet. Massive atmospheric vortices called hurricanes that could level entire cities, tectonic shifts causing earthquakes that swallowed buildings whole, mountains that periodically expelled molten planetary core material onto the surface in events called volcanic eruptions. And that was just the natural phenomena. The sections on human conflict were even more disturbing. Wars that spanned entire continents, weapons designed specifically to cause maximum casualties, ideological divisions so profound that entire populations would systematically exterminate each other based on abstract concepts like nationality, religion, or economic theory. Mr. Sayharus clicked to another section and felt his feathers instinctively flatten against his body, a defensive reflex. The file contained information about human biological resilience, their ability to survive massive trauma, regenerate damaged tissue, and adapt to extreme environments. Humans could lose entire limbs and survive. They could function with half their blood volume depleted. They could endure temperature variations that would kill most Federation species instantly. Sweet mother of light, he whispered to himself. How is this even possible? The office door slid open, startling Mr. Karas into a reflexive squawk of alarm. Headmaster Zulix, a Devorian with a resplendent mantle of neural tendrils cascading down his back, glided into the room with the effortless dignity of his species. Still working, old friend? The headmaster asked, his translator rendering his ultrasonic speech patterns into standard galactic common. Headmaster, I wasn't expecting anyone at this hour, Mr. Karas said, instinctively minimizing the screen showing particularly graphic images of human battlefield medicine. I thought I would check on your progress with the human educational materials. Headmaster Zulix replied, his neural tendrils shifting color slightly, a sign of curiosity. I understand you've been consulting with the human female designated Dianas regarding their planetary history. Yes, and I'm having considerable difficulty processing the information, Mr. Karas admitted, reopening the files. By all scientific principles we understand, humans should not exist as a viable species. Their homeworld meets every criterion for classification as a death world. atmospheric cyclones capable of demolishing infrastructure, tectonic instabilities that reshape entire landmasses, mountains that eject planetary core material, and I haven't even completed the section on natural hazards. The headmaster's mantle shifted to a thoughtful blue-green. And yet, here they are among us. Indeed, Mr. Kairos said, flicking to another section, and beyond merely surviving these conditions, they appear to have thrived. Diana mentioned casually that humans have reached a point where they are actively damaging their own ecosystem through industrial activities. Imagine a species so resilient that it becomes a threat to the very world that forged it. If you find that disturbing, the headmaster said, his mantle now pulsing with amused patterns, you might be interested to know that humans regularly consume capsaicin as a flavor enhancer in their nutrition. Mr. Kairos stared at his superior in disbelief. Please tell me you're attempting humor, headmaster. I assure you I am entirely serious, Zurlix replied. The same compound that has been classified as a chemical weapon in 17 galactic sectors is used by humans to make their food more exciting. You're suggesting, Mr. Sayharus said slowly, that humans willingly consume a neurotoxin banned for military use throughout the Federation, for pleasure, in quantities that would constitute a war crime if deployed against any sentient species, the headmaster confirmed. And if that revelation distresses you, I should probably withhold the information about their recreational consumption of caffeine. Mr. Kairos's head snapped up. Caffeine, the neural stimulant that causes systemic failure in most carbon-based life forms. The very same, Zurlix said, his mantle now undulating with unmistakable amusement at his colleague's dismay. Many humans consume it daily, often multiple times, as a method of increasing alertness. Some even develop dependency on it. Mr. Kairos stared at the headmaster for a long moment, before deliberately lowering his head to his desk with a soft thud, emitting a groan of intellectual surrender. The headmaster's laughter sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Don't worry, old friend. Your next scheduled instruction period with human Diana isn't for another 2 solar cycles. You have ample time to adjust your worldview before then. If these revelations don't cause my neural pathways to collapse first, Mr. Kairos muttered into his desk. Consider it an educational opportunity, the headmaster said, as he glided toward the exit. After all, isn't expanding our understanding of diverse life forms the cornerstone of our institution's mission? As the door closed behind Zurlix, Mr. Kairos lifted his head and stared again at the historical files. If the information about Earth's natural conditions and human physiology didn't induce complete cognitive shutdown, the humans themselves might just finish the job. The following day, Diana awoke to the soft chiming of her dormitory alarm system. The walls of her sleeping chamber cycled from the deep blue of simulated night to a gentle amber that mimicked Earth's sunrise. Outside her window, the actual view remained unchanged, an eternal starfield punctuated by the occasional passing spacecraft. After a quick shower in the hygiene station, which thankfully used actual water rather than the sonic cleaning technology preferred by most Federation species, Diana dressed in the standardized educational attire provided to all exchange students. The uniform was clearly designed with alien physiologies in mind, with numerous adjustable panels and strange materials that shifted texture based on body temperature. The Federation logo, a stylized spiral galaxy, with 17 stars representing the founding species, was emblazoned across the back. Diana checked her schedule on her tablet. First period, physical exercise under instructor Kokor. At least she wouldn't have to engage her brain immediately. With Earth's internet connection, she had stayed up far too late catching up on shows and messaging her friends back home, trying to explain the surreal experience of being surrounded by aliens who regarded her with a mixture of fascination and terror. She made her way to the gymnasium,
navigating the sprawling complex of the educational sector with growing familiarity. The station's design followed logical patterns once you understood the underlying principles: educational facilities in the outer ring, administrative offices in the central hub, residential quarters arranged by species compatibility in the connecting spokes. When Diana arrived at the gymnasium, she was impressed by its size. The ceiling soared at least 30 meters overhead, and the floor space could have accommodated several basketball courts with room to spare. Various equipment stations were scattered throughout, featuring devices that seemed to combine exercise apparatus with medical diagnostic technology. Instructor Kokor stood near the entrance, his owl-like features set in a stern expression. Unlike Mr. Karas, whose Owlkin heritage manifested in softer, more scholarly features, Kokor's appearance suggested a more predatory ancestry: sharper beak, more pronounced facial disc, and muscular wings that had evolved into arm-like appendages while retaining some vestigial feathers. "So you're the almighty Deathworlder species I've heard so much about," Kokor said, as Diana approached, his translator rendering his words with a distinct edge of skepticism. "Let me tell you first, bucko, in my gymnasium, you're all equals until proven otherwise. You want to prove yourself to me, then you have to earn it." Diana couldn't help but smirk. After weeks of being treated either as a terrifying anomaly or a fragile curiosity, Kokor's challenge was refreshing. "Well, I suppose I will then," she replied, stretching her arms casually. Kokor's eyes narrowed, but Diana detected what might have been approval in his posture. "I'll admit, Deathworlder, you've got spirit. But let's see if said spirit matches your muscle." He turned to address the entire class, which consisted of about 20 students from various species. "All right, everyone, let's start this off plain and simple." One lap around the gymnasium, a collective groan rose from the assembled students. Diana looked around in confusion. The perimeter of the gym couldn't have been more than 400 meters. A single lap was hardly a challenge. "Just one lap?" she asked. Kokor rounded on her, his feathers puffing up slightly. "Damn straight. Now, move it. Get those bodies into action." He pointed a feathered finger at Diana. "Deathworlder, you're at the back. If you think it's so easy, then let's see if you can overtake everyone." Diana shrugged and took her position at the rear of the group, as the other students formed a loose line and began jogging. They moved with what seemed to Diana like excruciating slowness, their pace barely faster than a walk. She waited a few seconds to give them a head start, then began her own run. The sensation was exhilarating. In the station's reduced gravity, each stride launched her forward with minimal effort. Diana found herself passing student after student, as if they were standing still, her legs eating up the distance with ease. She completed the lap in under 20 seconds, coming to a stop in front of a dumbfounded instructor Kokor.
"Done," she announced, not even slightly winded. Kokor's beak opened and closed several times without producing sound. The other students had stopped their own progress around the track to stare at her in astonishment. "How did you?" the instructor finally managed. Diana shrugged. "Dude, my planet's gravity is like 5 times stronger than this. Even under Earth conditions, I'd still be faster than this." Kokor slowly lowered himself onto a nearby bench, his expression suggesting some fundamental recalibration of his worldview was in progress. Everyone else, finish your run," he said distantly. "I think I need to sit down." Diana approached him with a tentative smile. "So, does my spirit match my muscle?" Before Kokor could formulate a response, the gymnasium doors slid open, and Tyler jogged in, looking slightly disheveled. "Sorry I'm late, sir. Got lost trying to find this place. These corridors all look the same." "I told you we should have come together," Diana called to him. Tyler shrugged. "Better late than never. So, what's going on?" We were told to run a lap around the gym, Diana explained, gesturing to the other students who were still making their way around the track. Tyler looked at the slow-moving aliens, then back at Diana with disbelief. Wait, one lap? You're kidding, right? I'm afraid not, Diana said, pointing at the students who had barely reached the quarter mark of their journey. Oh, they're, that slow, huh? Yep. Even with gravity 5 times weaker than Earth's, these guys still run slower than a 5-year-old. Throughout this exchange, Instructor Coker listened with growing dismay. These humans regarded his elite physical training course, the most demanding in the entire educational sector, as trivial. He wanted to object, to defend the rigorous standards he had established, but the evidence of human physical superiority was undeniable. Tyler grinned at Diana, a competitive light entering his eyes. Well, since we'll be waiting a while, wanna see who's got the better speed? Diana couldn't suppress her answering grin. After weeks of holding back, of careful movements and restrained strength, the prospect of a real physical challenge was irresistible. Oh, so you're challenging me, huh? Well then, game on. As the two humans approached the track, Instructor Coker found himself watching with a mixture of professional interest and personal awe. He had witnessed the speed of one human, now he would see 2 of them at their full capacity. What followed defied his comprehension of physical limitations. As the regular students continued their laborious progress around the single lap, Diana and Tyler became blurs of motion, circling the gymnasium repeatedly with increasing speed. The mere displacement of air created by their passage caused lighter students to stagger. By the time the class had completed their single lap, the humans had circled the gymnasium nearly 50 times, laughing and taunting each other as they pushed their limits in the reduced gravity. The remainder of the class proceeded in similar fashion. Each new exercise Coker introduced, weight resistance training, flexibility assessments, endurance challenges, the humans completed with casual ease, often turning the activities into personal competitions that showcased physical capabilities far beyond the established parameters of the course. When Coker instructed the class to perform 20 standing jumps, Diana and Tyler began a contest to see who could touch the highest point on the gymnasium's wall, eventually reaching marks nearly 6 meters above the floor. During strength assessment, the diagnostic equipment registered an error when Tyler exceeded its maximum measurement threshold on his 3rd repetition. For the flexibility evaluation, Diana demonstrated a full split position that caused several students with rigid exoskeletons to emit distress signals. By the session's end, Instructor Coker had abandoned his planned curriculum entirely, instead observing the humans with the focused attention of a scientist documenting a previously unknown phenomenon. His initial skepticism had given way to a profound reassessment of his understanding of physical capability. For their part, Diana and Tyler found themselves simultaneously exhilarated by the freedom to use their full abilities and disappointed by the lack of genuine challenge. As the class period ended, they joined the stream of students heading toward the cafeteria, their competitive exercises having awakened substantial appetites. That was actually kind of fun, Diana admitted as they navigated the corridor. I've been so careful about not breaking things or hurting anyone that I'd forgotten what it feels like to really move. Tell me about it, Tyler agreed. Though did you see Coker's face when you jumped high enough to touch the ceiling? I thought his eyes were going to pop out of his head. They both laughed, drawing curious glances from passing aliens who instinctively gave them a wider berth in the hallway. Human laughter, Diana had learned, registered as an alarm signal to several Federation species due to its acoustic similarity to their predators' hunting calls. The cafeteria occupied a vast circular chamber at the junction of several educational wings, designed to accommodate the diverse nutritional requirements of the station's many species. Different serving stations catered to specific dietary needs: photosynthetic supplements for the plant-based Florians, mineral solutions for the crystalline Moraxians, protein suspensions for the insectoid Chitixi, and a specially designated terrestrial nutrition section for the human exchange students. Diana and Tyler joined the small cluster of humans already gathered at their designated table. Federation regulations required each species to consume nutrition in designated areas equipped with appropriate environmental controls and emergency medical response systems, though Diana suspected the real purpose was to keep the potentially dangerous humans contained during meal periods. There they are, called Brody, a tall basketball player whose lanky frame had made him particularly popular with the Selfids, who regarded his height as a sign of evolutionary superiority. The gym teacher still alive, or did you guys accidentally kill him with your superhuman abilities? He's fine, Diana said, sliding onto the bench with her tray of what the Federation nutritionists had assured her was a reasonable approximation of a chicken sandwich. Just having an existential crisis about his teaching methods. Join the club, said Jennifer, Jen to her friends, a fierce debater from their AP history class, whose confrontational intellectual style had already earned her a reputation throughout the educational sector. I had advanced botanical sciences this morning, and the teacher nearly had a nervous breakdown when I told him humans deliberately cultivate and consume plant reproductive organs. You mean fruits and vegetables? Tyler asked, examining his own meal with suspicion. Exactly, Jen said, gesturing emphatically with her fork. Apparently, most Federation species consider it deeply disturbing to eat any part of a plant involved in reproduction. The Florians in class were practically wilting with horror. Speaking of horror, said Caleb, a stocky football player whose broad shoulders and muscular build had made him something of a spectacle among the physically fragile majority of Federation species. Did you guys hear what happened in the chemistry lab yesterday? Zhao was demonstrating how humans use yeast fermentation to produce alcohol, and 3 different species activated the biohazard containment protocols. Diana laughed. No way. Didn't anyone tell them that humans have been making alcohol for thousands of years? That's what made it worse, Caleb replied. The idea that we deliberately cultivate microorganisms to produce neurotoxins for recreational consumption apparently violates about 6 different galactic ethical guidelines. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chiming sound, followed by an announcement in Galactic Common. Attention all students, the midday nutrition period will conclude in 15 minutes. Please ensure all consumption is completed and disposal units utilized appropriately before proceeding to afternoon educational sequences. I still can't get used to how they talk about eating, Tyler muttered. It's like they're embarrassed by the whole concept of requiring food. Most of them are, said a new voice, as Zhao, their classmate from Denver, who had been mentioned moments earlier, joined them at the table. I've been studying xenocultural attitudes toward biological functions. For most Federation species, the need for nutrition is considered a regrettable evolutionary necessity, rather than a potential source of pleasure. That explains why this food tastes like someone described a sandwich to an AI that's never seen bread. Diana said, prodding her meal skeptically. Actually, that's exactly what happened, Zhao replied, adjusting his glasses. The Federation nutrition synthesizers work from descriptive algorithms rather than molecular patterns. They've never actually analyzed real Earth food, just created approximations based on our descriptions. Fascinating and depressing all at once, Jen said. No wonder my coffee tastes like hot water with a vague memory of caffeine. At least we get real food in our dorms, Brody pointed out. The care packages from Earth arrived yesterday. I've got actual Doritos and Mountain Dew in my room if anyone wants to trade. This announcement sparked an immediate flurry of negotiation as the humans began bartering their precious Earth commodities. Diana found herself offering 2 packages of Oreos for a bottle of hot sauce, while Tyler attempted to establish a complex 3-way exchange involving Roman noodles,
beef jerky, and a chocolate bar. From across the cafeteria, a group of faculty members observed the animated human interactions with a mixture of scientific curiosity and trepidation. Their social dynamics are fascinating, noted Professor Xylith, a Solarian xenosociologist whose translucent epidermis revealed the complex network of neural pathways beneath. Despite their reputation for violence, they form strong cooperative bonds and appear to derive significant emotional satisfaction from group interactions. Yes, but observe the underlying competitive elements, countered Dr. Narix, a Vetuvian, whose spiral-shaped sensory organs rotated continuously as he analyzed the human's behavior. Even in this apparently cooperative exchange, they establish hierarchies and engage in strategic resource allocation typical of apex predator species. I'm more concerned about their dietary preferences, said nutritional coordinator Flex, who oversaw the cafeteria's operations. They consistently reject the carefully balanced nutrition we provide in favor of substances with minimal biological value. Several of their preferred consumables contain compounds classified as toxins in Federation guidelines. Yet they thrive on such substances, Mr. Sayers added, his feathers still slightly ruffled from his intensive study of human history the previous night. Their entire evolutionary path has been shaped by exposure to conditions that would eradicate most sentient species. What we perceive as toxins, they process as routine biochemical challenges. The faculty members fell silent as they watched Diana successfully conclude her negotiation for the hot sauce, triumphantly displaying her acquisition to her peers with what appeared to be disproportionate satisfaction. The educational exchange initiative may prove more educational than we anticipated. Headmaster Zrilix observed, his neural mantle shifting through patterns of thoughtful concern. I believe we have as much to learn from these humans as they from us, perhaps more. Assuming they don't accidentally destroy the station first, Dr. Narix muttered, his sensory spirals contracting with anxiety. Back at the human table, Diana was explaining her afternoon schedule to Tyler. I've got interspecies cultural studies next, then galactic political systems, and finally comparative biology. Lucky you, Tyler replied. I've got advanced mathematics with Professor Zilth. Did you know that Chitixi use a base 16 numbering system? My brain feels like it's going to explode every time I try to convert their equations. At least math is universal, Diana pointed out. I had linguistic fundamentals yesterday, and apparently the concept of adjectives is considered a primitive linguistic construct in most galactic languages. The translator kept glitching when I tried to describe Earth as a beautiful but dangerous planet. The chime sounded again, signaling the end of the nutrition period. The humans gathered their trays and proceeded to the disposal units, where specialized recycling systems would break down their leftover food into its component molecules for reuse. As Diana separated from her friends and headed toward her interspecies cultural studies class, she found herself reflecting on the strange new reality she inhabited. Just 3 months ago she had been a normal high school student worried about college applications and prom dates. Now she was an ambassador for humanity on a space station thousands of light years from Earth, surrounded by beings who regarded her species as both fascinating and terrifying. The classroom for interspecies cultural studies was designed as a circular amphitheater, with tiered seating arranged to accommodate various physiological needs. Water tanks for the aquatic Malusians, anti-gravity platforms for the gaseous Etherians, thermal regulation pads for the temperature-sensitive Pyroxians. Diana took her seat in the section designated for humanoid species, nodding politely to a Selphid student, who shifted nervously away from her. Professor Kailunthi, a hominid, whose 6 arms moved in continuous graceful patterns as she spoke, began the session by announcing, "Today we will explore the concept of recreational activities across Federation cultures." Each species develops unique methods of leisure that reflect their evolutionary history, physical capabilities, and societal values. Diana settled in, expecting the usual parade of alien cultural practices that seemed designed to emphasize how strange and violent humans were by comparison. Every class session seemed to circle back to the same implicit conclusion: humans were evolutionary aberrations, fascinating specimens from a world that should have killed them long before they developed spaceflight. We will begin with the Florian tradition of communal photosynthesis, a meditative practice in which individuals arrange themselves to optimize light distribution among the group. Professor Kailanthi continued, her arms weaving patterns that somehow enhanced the translator's rendering of her melodic speech. Diana suppressed a sigh and prepared for another 2 hours of alien cultural appreciation that would inevitably exclude or pathologize human experiences. Yet as the professor moved through the various species' recreational activities, Moraxian harmonic resonance, Chitixi mathematical games, Devorian neural light painting, Diana found herself genuinely intrigued by the diversity of experiences. And now Professor Kailanthi said, her arms forming a pattern Diana had come to recognize as indicating transition to a new subject. We have a unique opportunity to learn about Terran, that is human recreational activities, directly from our exchange students. Diana straightened in her seat, surprised by this departure from the usual curriculum. Typically, human culture was addressed through carefully sanitized presentations by Federation anthropologists, rather than first-hand accounts. Diana, the professor said, focusing her compound eyes on her, would you be willing to share some examples of human recreational practices with the class? All eyes turned toward Diana, who suddenly felt the weight of representing her entire species. She cleared her throat. Well, there are many different types of recreation on Earth, varying by region, culture, age group, and personal preference. Perhaps you could focus on physical recreational activities, Professor Kailanthi suggested, her arms moving in a pattern Diana couldn't interpret. Many students have expressed curiosity about how humans channel their distinctive physical capabilities. Diana understood the subtext. They wanted to know how Deathworlders managed their apparently terrifying physical prowess without destroying everything around them. Sure, she said, one of the most popular global sports is soccer or football, as most countries call it. Players use their feet to maneuver a ball into the opposing team's goal. Fascinating, the professor said, and the objective is to demonstrate superior control over the spherical object. Partly, Diana replied, but it's also about teamwork, strategy, and skill. The rules prohibit using hands, which makes it more challenging. You deliberately impose limitations to increase difficulty, observed a Chitixi student, its mandibles clicking thoughtfully. A form of artificial selection pressure. I guess you could put it that way, Diana acknowledged. We have lots of sports like that.